So again, we've seen a lot of African scholars come out to say Western aid has done nothing but disempower African nations and African leaders. And what they have done is they've actually put Africa in a slumber or in a shamble, because they come in with the guise of aid and they reduce our institution to reflect their own institutions. And when they come in, what they do is that they actually start from the level of the highest authorities. They have to be people that studied in their own institutions and understand the way their own institutions are run. So they use those people to put at the hem of all the aid that they are providing in that country. So it doesn't reflect the nations or the local institutions' values, but it reflects their own values. So the ministers, the managers of the aid, the finance minister, the economic minister, it all reflects their own value in the Western world, and not even the values of the African nation that they claim they have come to help. So, so they literally now use even our own people that have studied in their own institution to further enslave and further disempower our own people. So when we look at these aspects of aid, in your own understanding and how this whole thing plays around, how do you coin, or how do you to the understanding of somebody who doesn't have an understanding of how these things work? We've cited instances of how they use it to reflect their own this thing, and you've also cited examples of like the USA. But to further bring clarity to our people who think that foreign aid has done a lot of good in Africa, especially when they came in during that time of millennium villages, building wells, water tanks, and all of these things, and claiming that they are providing aid to our people. From your understanding, how best can you describe this aid, and how has it really impacted the economy or the lives of the people that they claim they are aiding in these African countries?
Comrade, good question. I think this is a classic way of, if you look at the way that during slavery things were structured, you had what is now known as the house slave, and then you had those people that these were individuals that usually walk inside the house or the homes of the slave owners, and they were treated slightly differently because they had earned pretty much the trust of the slave owners, so the owners could allow them to walk inside the homes. And as a result of that, they felt like they were probably slightly better off than those that walked outside of the cotton farms. Yes. So because slavery was no longer, I will use the word here, sexy, they moved away from that. And what they've done today is that they take these individuals. I mean, right around the period of independence, you had like the president of, I want to say, the president of Togo, who had been, actually was Senegal, who had been trained in France, Senghor. He actually was previously a representative in the parliament in France, and then became the president of Senegal. So you have a situation where, in order for them to continue these aspects of slavery, they basically will have these individuals that they've probably trained and then nurtured, and then put them in those places to continue to, you will think that this is the president that was elected. Meanwhile, it is not someone that they elected. It was someone that was selected by them and put in that, and basically created a facade of a democratic election and put in that place to continue to implement whatever their agenda was. So we keep calling some of these things aid. We should equally be aware or be careful about what their media has been intoxicating. One of the means or the ways of control that the hegemon or the colonialists or neo-colonialists have used to control thoughts, perception, thinking. And one of the ways that they've done that is the use of the media. They control like 80-90% of the media around the world. From, well, I don't want to go to the on the list, naming the list right now, but because they control that media, when they come up with a strategy, then they push it through their media, and their media looks for ways to tell the rest of us how good that policy is or how good that strategy is. So in this case, you have a situation where they're calling certain things aid. Now, look at where that aid money goes. They could have, they create like a non-governmental organization that they call the Center for the Advancement of I just made this up, so it's not related to that actual Center for the Advancement of Democracy or Center for this or that, which it's always like really well sounding. So they provide this funding to these non-governmental organizations. What these non-governmental organizations do, if you look at the case of, I'm trying to stay within Africa here, but if you look at the case of countries in the South, they come in and they could finance a radio station for the translation of the Bible to the local languages. They could say they are the Center for the Advancement of Democracy. Meanwhile, perhaps the person that is the president of that country is somebody that they do not like. And as the person that they do not like, this Center for the Advancement of Democracy will sponsor protests, will sponsor events that are pushing towards opposing, or even may sponsor even the opposition party in that country that are opposing the president, to help put pressure on that president in the name of advancement of democracy. Sometimes they would even sponsor radio stations, and that radio station or TV station, their use would be propaganda to try to advance the language or to try to advance the whatever agenda that they have proposed to push in that country. So this is what. So you're receiving this aid. The aid does not go to. If you recall not very long ago, Uganda was under pressure. First, it wasn't just Uganda, but Uganda was under pressure to not pass a bill against homosexuality. Exactly. Homosexuality is not an African thing. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that it's very minor to the extent that nobody really cares. But they come up with this whole idea that individuals are not being treated equally. But meanwhile, nobody has ever been abused of things like that. So the whole aid comes in towards pushing that agenda to advance equality. Meanwhile, it is the agenda that they are trying to push to distort our culture. They bring in that media too to tell us that. At one time, I took my family to an event, all very European oriented, and we were dressed in like aguada and traditional dresses. One individual came around and commented, "These are very good costumes." And I'm looking at myself, how do you call an entire aguada 3-piece costume? So this is the way they see it. They use their media to push their jeans, Levi's, Levi, as they call it here sometimes, push their business suit formal. So pushing their culture, pop culture, their music. And by doing that, they kill the local culture, they kill the African culture, because then they present themselves as this is better than anything else. So that is one of the ways that they've used to do this. Now, you talked about putting in or individuals that do not represent the aspiration of the African people. They train all these individuals, they put them in positions of responsibilities, they provide to them the agenda that they want to push forward. One of the ways that they've sorted out to control has been, if you look at the regional organizations like ECOWAS, I think there is the East African Economic Organization. Community, thank you. The East African Community, even the African Union. A lot of these, the aid also comes in to support these regional organizations. But if you look at the agenda of these regional organizations, it's still the same agenda, which is not an agenda to build prosperity for the African countries or the countries of the South. It's still an agenda that is pushed by the hegemon, the colonialists, to make sure that they continue to remain in control. Number one, they've used the other methods that we will talk about. That I wanted to take a break here and just give you a chance to, unless you want me to keep on.
Okay, you will bring that in when you have the opportunity to. And I just want to, so that we'll redirect it in a way that audience will kind of like pick up with us and understand with us. So I'll just come in now more in the form of direct questions, so that in that way, while you're answering, it will also help them to participate.